My name is Catherine Muther, and it's my great pleasure to welcome and introduce you to Sir Fazle Hasan Abed, who is the founder and chairperson of BRAC, the organization he started in 1972. What began as a limited relief operation called the Bangladesh Rural Advancement Committee. Under the leadership of Sir Fazle, BRAC has grown into the largest development organization in the world in terms of the scale and diversity of its interventions. The work of BRAC reaches an estimated 135 million people in 11 countries throughout Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean. Sir Fazle has received numerous awards for his achievements in leading BRAC, including the Leo Tolstoy International Gold Medal, the inaugural Clinton Global Citizen Award, and the Gates Award for Global Health. Please join me in welcoming Sir Fazle Hasan Abed for a conversation about poverty alleviation, education, and gender equity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's such a pleasure for me to see you again and to welcome you to San Francisco.
Yes, indeed, Kate.
The title of this program is the Anti-Poverty Toolkit.
Okay.
And to me, that evokes this image of, pull out a screwdriver and a hammer and some nails and, there's... So I know that BRAC has developed some very powerful and effective models in education and in microcredit and in many other dimensions of its work.
Right.
So is there some kind of blueprint, or how do you know, what's the foundation? How do you know when you go into a new country or BRAC goes into a new country? Well, do you start with education? Do you start with health? Do you start with how does that work?
Well, our focus of attention is poor people.
Mm-hmm.
So poor people's needs are many dimensional needs: healthcare, education, income, employment, all kinds of things. Mm-hmm. So one needs to address these needs, and priorities in different villages are different. So in most cases, we find that the poor people, almost in every village I've visited in Africa or Asia, they would need support in terms of income and employment. Mm-hmm. These are almost universally needed. They will, in some cases, they will need education for their children because there is no school in that village. In some cases, there are needs for healthcare. There's nothing exists in or around the village. So we have developed over the years some ways of dealing with multiple needs of poor people. One need that we have always felt that we need to create enabling condition for poor people to act on their own behalf. Mm-hmm. So how do you get poor people to act in order to defeat poverty themselves? So we try to create enabling conditions. What is an enabling condition for a poor people to act on his own behalf? I consider microfinance as one of them. Mm-hmm. So if you provide financial services to them, savings, credit, and so on, they can act. They can immediately get into some activities, a business, an enterprise, and so on. So and earn an
Self-employment.
income. Sorry?
Self-employment or livelihood?
Self-employment or livelihood, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, so you create an enabling environment, and then the activities are done by the poor people. So what I'm saying is that most of the work is done by the poor people themselves. My organization only provides opportunities for them through providing support services such as they take savings, mm-hmm. they provide credits, and so on. So my focus is to get poor people to act on their own behalf in whether it is employment income, whether it is even healthcare. So we'll provide immunization for children, but the women have to bring all their children to get their children immunized so that the mortality can go down. Maternal mortality, we have worked on cutting down maternal mortality throughout Africa and Asia. And so we expect women, when we provide services, women to come for antenatal care and then come to a delivery center where we have got appropriate, well-trained midwives, and then deliver, and then also come for postnatal cares.
May I interrupt you with a question?
Yeah.
Is there some level of trust or relationship or village organization or something? Is there some capacity for a relationship of trust before women will go to the clinic, or people will?
I think the first thing we do is to organize people for power. Mm-hmm. Organizing poor people together, mm-hmm. to act together, mm-hmm. sometimes, to defeat poverty. So organization of poor people is important. So when you go into a village, we organize people, mm-hmm. and then we maybe start with microfinancial services. We will open up schools for children, and so on. So we expect them to use these facilities that we provide. So we may train one of their members from the village as a teacher, mm-hmm. and she will provide education to children. We have provided about 10 million children education in Bangladesh over the last 30 years, of which about 7 million are girls, because we were very focused on girls' education. And in order to do that, we didn't really build lots of schools with lots of infrastructure, lots of money spent on infrastructure. What we did, we wanted to get education to children as fast as possible. So we developed our curriculum, materials, and systems of training teachers. And we started training teachers, hiring a small room with about 400 square feet of space, and then set up one teacher schools for 30 children and one teacher. And we repeated it over 35,000 of them we created in Bangladesh alone at one point, and provided education to 1.2 million children at a time. Mm-hmm. So over the years, now we have educated almost, as I said, 10 million children, of which 7 million are girls. And that was done with a view to getting children educated. That was more important than trying to build schools and
Yes.
teaching system and things like that.
Where
so Bangladesh needed that, and as fast as possible. Right now, we are trying to do the similar kind of thing in South Sudan, mm-hmm. where almost for 30 years there has not been any government system which provided education to children. And right now there is about 1 million children in South Sudan needs some form of education. So we are trying to we are getting the villagers to build something, yeah. But we are training teachers to get into providing education to children.
Tell us about, if you could, tell us about where does the human rights or the gender equality fit into the village model or the education model? Where does that begin with girls? Does it begin with children? Does it begin with women who are able to get a microfinance loan?
BRAC's model, as you know, Kate,
yes.
has always been focused on women as agents of change. So all our microfinance clients, about 7.9 million in Bangladesh, about 180,000 in Uganda, mm-hmm. or 120,000 in Tanzania, all are women. So women has been at the focus of our attention, not because of anything else, but the fact that women, we chose women as the agents of change. So most people ask me, why women? And I said that I've seen many defeated men, but never a defeated woman. so, so the women seem to, even in extreme poverty, still can operate, still has to work, keep the family together. All these kind of things are done by women all the time. And we felt that if women are the managers of poverty, then they should be the managers of development too. And that's one of the reasons why we have focused our attention on women and equality. And that has also helped women to come up, to have more opportunities in contributing to family. And women's income has contributed to family welfare than most men's income that we know of.
So this is a strategy that, coming back to your original concept of empowering the poor and
Absolutely.
organizing the poor,
poor.
To organize themselves really,
Yes,
and to come into their
yes,
own power,
yeah.
and that the women tend to be the agents of this.
Right, agents of change. Yeah, sure. The education that I've been talking about. How did we develop an education program which is really effective and efficient and provide not the child-centered learning? I remember reading an article in Times Educational Supplement, which was talking about the 10 best schools in the world. And what are the 10 best schools? It's the Dutch provides the best education in mathematics and the second language. So any Dutch child, 14-year-old, can speak not only Dutch but also English and German. The Italians are the best for preschool education. So they are the ones who develop Montessori system and all that.
That's right, yes.
The Swedes are the best for adult education. The Germans tend to do very well in terms of the managing their education system. So their teachers teach more hours to their children than any other country in the world. The Japanese are the best for science education.
What are the Bangladesh best at?
And what the United States is good at is the PhD.
Oh.
PhD training is the best in the United States. So, and the New Zealand are the best for teaching mother tongue. So I thought.
So you took, what did you
So
take
so
the
so I
pieces
thought what could I now do bring into
yeah.
the curriculum development in Bangladesh. So I brought in the Dutch teacher, primary school teacher, who teaches in mathematics to
I didn't know
6-year-olds.
this. Wow.
Yeah, you didn't know that.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so the Dutch educators, mathematics teachers, worked with us for a year and a half in Bangladesh, and I sent one of my assistants to go and see the New Zealand ambassador, who was based in Delhi. It was Sir Edmund Hillary, the conqueror of Everest. He was the ambassador of New Zealand in Delhi. So one of my assistants went to see him. I said, could we get a New Zealand teacher who would train our curriculum people as to how to develop mother tongue teaching. So we got 2 teachers from New Zealand to come and work with us for about a year. So we developed our whole process of teaching, learning, and the best way of doing it in Bangladesh, and sort of perfected it and revised it over periods of time and made it very, very effective as an education outcome. As a result, BRAC children coming out of BRAC primary school is far superior than the state school system can provide. And we are doing the same kind of thing now in Africa, trying to get so the maths teaching is very similar to what we are doing in Bangladesh. Language teaching is slightly difficult because we need to retrain the language teachers in their own language as to how to train that particular language. But then immersion in teaching learning in terms of teaching a child how to read as fast as possible, and then once a child knows how to read, then of course he gathers knowledge very quickly. So the strategy is to get him to read fast as quickly as possible. And once you can do that, then of course he learns faster. So that's what happens. And the other thing is that initially you don't correct too many spelling mistakes and things like that. Let them do as much of writing as possible.
That would have been good
out of their own heads. Yeah,
that would have been good for me in my own education. I wasn't too good at spelling.
Anyway, so we learned many things while other people's experience in teaching learning, and made our education system a child-centered learning and provide high-quality education. As a result of which, what happens in Bangladesh every year, there is primary school completion exam throughout the country, the same exam taken throughout the country. So you find that we have 10% of our children come from BRAC school who take this exam. But if you look at the top 10% of the 10th percentile, 38% of the top 10 percentile are from BRAC schools. So that means that most of our children are in the top 10th percentile.
Tell us about this new initiative that was announced at the Clinton Global Initiative to vastly scale education for girls on a global basis.
Yes. And
that several organizations, including BRAC, have made commitments to get behind this. And what do you see that BRAC, how will BRAC contribute to this, and what role will BRAC play in this global initiative?
I think we are playing the largest role. I mean, we have committed to put in $238 million over the next 5 years to provide education to girls. So basically, we have this, some of the money already committed by other donors, and some we have to raise. But we are going to be the largest program for girls' education, additional program in this effort that many organizations are now trying to focus attention on girls' education.
Will BRAC be going into different countries, or will BRAC be
the same
doing
countries, same countries, more work.
More
work, yeah.
And at every stage of education?
Every stage, primary, secondary, and even tertiary, some of them. So we are getting into different territory now, getting more girls to go to secondary schools. We were quite content with getting girls having a primary education initially, but now we are seeing more of them are wishing to go into secondary education. And those who are completing secondary education are going to tertiary education. We are sending them out to China and to do their university education. So all kinds of opportunities are opening up for girls in our societies.
Could I ask you some questions about scaling? Because this is a massive scale up over a period of 5 years too.
Right.
And what I see BRAC as having the capacity and the models to scale to the poor. And oftentimes with social enterprises, we see that, or I've seen in some cases, where the social enterprise moves up market and away from the poor because the product isn't affordable, or there's no market demand, or the expense of market development is too high, or there's no distribution. So there is a kind of pressure that or tendency for entrepreneurs. They can't help it. It's not even right or wrong,
Right,
but
right.
they scale up. They move up market to have the enterprise survive. And BRAC has been, when I said scaling to the poor, BRAC has been able to keep the focus on the
Yes,
poor.
right.
And how does that happen? How does that happen that, what is it about the organization
we
or
as
the
an
models?
organization wanted to do something about the poor. The
Yes.
poverty alleviation and empowerment of the poor is our primary mission of the organization. So poor people's needs and aspirations and dreams and struggles are we are looking at it all the time. And so when we go for microfinance, let's say that most microfinance organizations working in Africa or Asia will be working in urban areas where there are lots of people, lots of poor people, and you can disburse financial services very quickly and make money. But then, what about the large numbers of very poor people living in rural areas? It is more difficult to do it.
More expensive to
More
reach.
expensive to do it. But we will. So while we would start our program in urban centers, but very quickly we will come out and into rural areas and expand our programs, despite the fact that it may not be as profitable or as easily done as we would do in urban areas. But it's one of the mandates that we have within the organization, that we must serve our rural poor as much as. So when BRAC was started, it was called Rural Advancement Committee. The rural advancement is one of our primary goals.
see.
And so whatever it takes, we try to do it. The other thing is how to scale things. Scaling things, scaling a good model. Once you have developed a good model, you have to first make it effective
Yes.
and then make it efficient. So once it's effective and efficient and you are satisfied with the results, then you want to scale it up. So scale up requires your capacity within your organization to be able to recruit the right people. So you have to have a good HR department. You have to have a training department who can train large numbers of people and deploy them throughout the country if you want to do a national program. You have to raise money. You have to have accounting systems to keep track of all the money that you are going to spend. You have to have the audit, or internal audit, to see that the money is not wasted. So all kinds of infrastructure, human infrastructure, you have to develop. Capacity of training people, deploying them, keeping accounting, keeping them straight by auditing what's happening. So all kinds of things you have to do. And the most important thing then is also to find money to finance all this big expansion. So all these things you have to do in order to be able to scale up. And BRAC has been very lucky in getting support from donors to scale up our programs, which were initially started small, proved to be quite effective. And the donors said, all right, if it is that effective, why don't expand it throughout the country? So we were able to do that.
With this actually, we have some questions from you, and one of these questions relates to this issue, which is how does BRAC know that its programs are effective? How do you measure effectiveness? And what are the tools to?
Oh my God! I mean, this is something that we have been doing all the time.
Yes.
We measure effectiveness all
it's
the time.
still.
Shall I give you an example?
Well, sure. There's this whole theme of evidence-based. So tell us a little bit about that, and how do you know? How do we know?
In 1979, it was the International Year of the Child. And I thought that we need to do something about the high infant and child mortality rate in Bangladesh. So what to do? The biggest killer of children was diarrhea. Almost 58% of the children died of diarrhea under 5. So we thought that, all right, if we teach mothers how to make oral dehydration fluid at home to keep the body rehydrated, it's the dehydration from diarrhea which kills a baby, as a child. So we decided to go to every household in Bangladesh, 16 million households in rural Bangladesh, and teach mothers one by how to make oral dehydration with salt, sugar, and water in the right amount of mixture, and then administer it. So the first 30,000 households we visited, and our workers visited and told them exactly what is oral dehydration, how it is, how to make oral dehydration fluid at home, how to measure water and salt and sugar and things like that. We sent out a group of monitors to check what percentage of these 30,000 households had diarrhea during that month, and how many used oral dehydration. We found only 6% of them used oral dehydration therapy. So we were so disappointed, disheartened, in fact, but very quickly found out that there are oral dehydration workers. They don't believe in oral dehydration themselves. So if they had diarrhea, they would go and buy a pill from the pharmacy, and so they didn't believe in oral dehydration. So we brought them into Dhaka and explained to them exactly how oral dehydration works, took them to the hospital, or Cholera Research Hospital, to show them how children are revived through oral saline. So we send them back again once they're convinced that their oral dehydration is a good, efficacious way of treating diarrhea. They went back again. So we hoped that now the quality of teaching will improve, and women would be using oral dehydration when they had diarrhea in the household. So another 30,000 households were visited. Again, a group of monitors went in and checked what percentage. It went up to 19%. We were still very, very disheartened because 81% of the households didn't use oral dehydration. So what's the problem? The problem was, then I sent out a group of anthropologists to 6,800 households which did use oral dehydration therapy during that month. So anthropologists went in, and then they found out that it was the men who dissuaded their women. They said, "Oh, no, oral dehydration, this is no good. I will get pills from the pharmacy." So we then came to the conclusion that our program design was wrong. The decision maker in the house, the men, we have not touched them at all. Our oral dehydration workers who are women, they are going to the women in the household. Men didn't even know anything about it. They thought maybe that they are teaching family planning, and I want to have another baby, so it's all wrong. So after that, we redesigned the program. So every time we went into a village to teach mothers, teach women how to make oral dehydration fluid, we would gather all the men together, tell them exactly what we are teaching their women. Then we went to the mosques to preach during the Friday prayers about oral dehydration, tell them all about it. We went to marketplaces. We followed it up with radio and television spots. Once we have done that, then it started going up, the use of oral dehydration therapy. So it took us about 1.5 years to get this whole effectiveness.
Yes.
Program effectiveness.
It's a learning process. I think
learning
that's what the
process.
person was kind of asking. Well,
So-
that
so-
you
so-
make a mistake. You have to keep on fine tuning based on a
Fine-tuning.
learning cycle.
Once you
of-
have done that, then
and then you come up.
Yeah. So when I said that you have to first make it effective.
Yes.
So the first year went on making the program effective. Then how to make it efficient. The efficient part of it is routinizing tasks which are effective, which are essential, and discarding those which are inessential. For example, as I said, that we went from house to house teaching one woman and one worker. We found that if we could get 2 or 3 women from the neighboring households together, and one worker teaches 3 women at the time, it doesn't take 3 times.
Yes.
They
can learn from each other.
They can learn from each other, and you can probably do it in 1 hour, whereas it would have otherwise taken 2.5 hours to train 3 women. So that was more efficient. We also paid our workers on the basis of retention of knowledge by the mother and whether she could make oral rehydration fluid correctly on that. So 10% of the household would be monitored 6 weeks after they were taught, and the payment would be made to the worker on the basis of the results. So we used to do 10% sampling in order to pay our workers. But we realized that we don't have to do 10%, 5% would do. And so we reduced that costs, and that also cost savings. So we made it more efficient. And then we expanded throughout the country.
Right. One of the things that I've observed myself about BRAC is there's a kind of audacious ambition.
Yes.
So you start off in saying, okay, well, we're going to teach 6 million poor...
16 million.
16 million poor women how to, make oral rehydration and to use it. And that's...
How are they going to make a difference in the mortality rate?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think, but I think it's kind of ambition that drives, that is motivating, and that BRAC seems to have this capacity for thinking big. And for example, in the BRAC is in the has built out the dairy industry to industry scale across the entire country.
Right.
And that began with another audacious ambition, which is that BRAC is a protein-poor country, like many poor countries, and in importing powdered milk.
Powdered milk.
Well, why do we have to do it that way? Yeah. Why don't we build an entire dairy industry?
Dairy industry.
Right.
And
but most people don't think that way. You think this is normal for you in BRAC, but this is that's an unusual kind of capacity for vision that drives then this processes.
But the problem, Kate, in dairy industry was Europe used to produce too much milk and the mountain of butter, if you remember, when they used to subsidize their milk industry. And then at that time, in 1970s, when I thought of developing dairy industry in Bangladesh, I couldn't have done it because the pricing was wrong. When after the Maastricht Treaty, Europe started cutting down subsidy on their dairy industry, cutting down the number of cows producing milk. Then Bangladesh could go into business effectively, and then compete with European milk. And then we went to milk industry because it would have been wrong if we did the same thing in the 1970s, which we did in 1990s. It was the right time to do it. So that's an aside to you.
Anyway, I got us a little bit away from the question. That there are a couple of questions here that relate to the growing presence of conflict around the world and the violence, and how is it that BRAC is able to work or support education for children in refugee situations or in countries where there's trauma and violence and war, which can you speak a little bit about?
It's very difficult. It's a very difficult situation. I mean, Afghanistan, we have 7,000 schools for girls. Now, most people think that the Taliban were against girls' education, but then what we did, culturally appropriate way of teaching girls, culturally appropriate way in Afghanistan. We decided that if the girls were accompanied by an older woman, chaperoned by older women, maybe 10, 15 girls to a school and bring them back to their homes, then it's culturally appropriate, and that even Talibans seem to accept that. So we provided that. So it was a little additional costs, but it was more effective. So we did it in a culturally appropriate way and still go on doing it. So I just hope that the next generation of girls, when these girls will be mothers and they will be sending their children, they won't need chaperoning at all. So hopefully once we have got girls educated, then one generation of girls educated, the next generation of girls will also be educated. One thing that I said once, which I said that the purpose of development is to change a culture. So the change culture in Afghanistan for girls to be educated. We wanted that to happen. So it's not. We sort of accepted the cultural norms of getting children chaperoned by an older woman, but then hopefully that once girls are educated, then the next generation of girls will not need that. So hopefully girls will be educated and it will become an accepted norm in even Afghan societies.
We have a question about technology.
Yeah.
And how does technology play, or what's the role of technology in the work that BRAC does? Although it's not specifically referenced here, but in thinking about bKash, which is the mobile banking system in Bangladesh, which had the fastest rate of acceptance around the world.
Yeah.
And how is that technology impacting, or the capacity for mobile communication impacting the work that you do, or the
mobile technology itself had a big impact in countries like Bangladesh. We didn't have telephones. I think there were 4 phones to 1,000 people in 1990s. Now in Bangladesh, 160 million people, and there are almost 100 million telephones. So if you take even most adults above the age of 50 will have a telephone. So this has had a big impact in terms of communication and so on. And also learning opportunities. Hopefully you can also teach things through the phones. The other thing that is happening is mobile financial services. You can transfer money from one phone to another. And BRAC has now been able to build up a whole system of agents throughout the country who will take money. You can encash money received from somebody through an agent. So this now provides an opportunity for anybody having a cell phone and a bKash account to be able to also receive a loan from a bank or saving money in his mobile phone, which has total control over it. I remember talking once to Bill Gates, and his main concern was that the poor people don't have access to safe savings. You save money with your brother who is well off, but then when you want to have the money, he says, "Come tomorrow." So you don't have any safe place to keep your money. So the poor people put their money under their bed to keep safe. But many times they lose that also. So how about keeping money safely and have total control over it? So Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has given us some extra funds to get this going. So at least poor people can save money in their cell phone safely and have a complete access to it anytime they want. So that's what we are trying to do. And I think what is going to happen also, the poor people will have access to not only savings but also credit. We are trying to work out algorithms to try and see how the history or transaction history of individuals receiving her salary, a government worker's salary in her phone, and then she's sending some money to her father in the village, some money she spends, and then suddenly she needs 20,000 taka because her father is ill and she has to go to hospital. Where is she going to get the money? She can have access to that if she has the cell phone, and if we can work out algorithms to say she can have instant access to credit. So this will have another dimension to poor people's inclusion in the financial services.
So is BRAC integrating the use of cell phone in its microcredit, microfinance?
We are doing it to some extent now. Larger loans are now going in through cell phones. But then hopefully even smaller loans could also be done through that. And hopefully even those who are not our clients now could, so anybody having a cell phone and having an account could have access to credit and savings and even insurance products and things like that.
Do women have the phones or do men have the phones? Is there something about the technology that is excluding women?
No.
No. Okay.
Everybody has a phone. So nowadays everybody has a phone. And women love to have a phone because they want to talk to each other. Right.
Okay. There are a couple of questions here about the long-term sustainability of BRAC's various programs.
Right.
That is there an element of dependence among people who participate in these programs, and is that a feature or a problem? Is that a problem, or will it become a problem? Are people becoming dependent?
It's always a problem for a non-profit organization to raise money, and you don't know whether next year you'll be able to raise enough money or not. But what BRAC has done over the years is to get into a lot of enterprises which can give you an extra income. So BRAC's budget in Bangladesh, for example, this year is $62 million, of which about 32% comes from donors, budgeted for this year, and the rest of it is from our own revenue generated by BRAC from businesses. So that makes us a lot more independent than many organizations who are totally dependent on donor money. And hopefully, so people ask me whether I want to be totally self-financed. And I say that no, I would like to be self-financed to the extent of about 90%. But 10% I still want to raise from donors because I want to see whether my programs are good enough for donors to come and fund me, because I want to be on the cutting edge of what I'm doing. So the donors should be attracted to fund me. So I want to see, I don't want to be totally
independent,
totally self-sufficient. I still want to be on the market to see whether I'm doing the right things. And the donors are attracted to fund me.
This is a question about the capacity of women in Bangladesh to develop their own businesses, their own social enterprises.
Yes.
How is that? In other words, it sounds like that this person is asking about businesses rather than kind of micro loans, but loans other.
We have microcredit.
Yes.
And we also have small and medium enterprises. Small and medium enterprises are mostly funded by banks. And we have got BRAC Bank, and almost 280,000 small enterprises are borrowing from BRAC banks. And the only difference between a micro and a small is that the micro is you are basically employing yourself in it, income generation activity which you can do yourself. With small enterprises, you are also hiring some more people, maybe family members, but some 2 or 3 others. So you're creating jobs for other people. So that's what we are in. We think that creating jobs for poor people is very important too. So small enterprises does that. If by lending $50,000 you're creating 15, 20 jobs, it's worthwhile doing that. So we do quite a bit of that. So from about $5,000 to $50,000 is small and medium enterprises we fund for BRAC Bank.
Okay. What about men? Are there programs that specifically involve men?
So the small and medium enterprises, there are quite a lot of men there. It's not restricted only to women. But we have got a women's wing.
A women's
wing. So the one wing of the bank.
I see.
So all the women go to that.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
And what is there ever, do we find, or does BRAC find in villages that there's ever men resist the women organizing or getting these microloans, or that
initially they did, but once they found that the family actually benefits from women's activities in financial economic activities, then men's reluctance seems to vanish. Many women who are divorced or the men left beforehand, when they see that the woman is earning more money, he comes back. So all kinds of things happens to families when you see the women are earning and are contributing to family budget.
Okay.
The other thing about violence.
Oh yes,
violence against women. We did a study of microfinance clients, whether microfinance actually creates more violence or not. We found that year 1 and 2, violence actually goes up because women assert herself, and he's not quite ready to take on these, sort of secondary role in the household. But then once in the year 3, it starts improving. In year 4 onwards, the violence actually goes down. So it takes a bit of time for men to get used to women's different role in his household.
This is on a different subject, but I know it's one that you would like to talk about, which is how is climate change affecting the way that BRAC designs and executes its future programs?
Well, climate change is not affecting everything. All parts of Bangladesh are not being affected by climate change, but some parts of Bangladesh, southern Bangladesh, is becoming very much is affected by climate change. We are getting more salt water from the sea coming inland and salinating our soil. And so we are having to adapt new kind of crops. We used to grow rice, now we are growing sunflowers. Sunflowers seem to adapt itself to saline soil. So we are adapting new kind of crops in these lands. So adaptation is going on in the southern Bangladesh, and we are also trying to develop new rice crops which are more saline tolerant varieties and things like that. So plant breeding, not only us but also Rice Research Institute in Manila, they're also trying to do that, and we are testing out new varieties in the southern Bangladesh belt. But mitigation is something that we can't do much about. We don't really do much harm to the planet yet because our economy is still quite we don't use too much fossil fuel
Yes.
in our economy.
But BRAC is so vulnerable for its the high
We are
density.
more vulnerable,
And yes.
vulnerable to, and we are more working on adaptation rather than mitigation.
Yeah. Okay. This is going back to microfinance.
Yeah.
The question raises the issue of exploitation of, in some microfinance programs, of poor people with excessive interest rates and other abuses or potential abuses that are in the model. How does BRAC deal with that?
Well, there is some exploitation that goes on. I mean, but then this kind of exploitation has been going on for many, many hundreds of years by moneylenders throughout history in many societies, and it's still go on. But I think microfinance exploitation, if you call it exploitation, yes. Sometimes the cost is so high that you have to charge an interest rate that seems to be exploitative. But most microfinance organizations are still not very, very profitable. So if you look at worldwide, microfinance organizations in Africa, are they making a lot more money? They're charging high interest rate, but they're not. The cost is very high too. So I would say that microfinance is not as exploitative as it used to be done by moneylenders who were the only provider of loans to poor people in the old days. Now at least you have got an institutional mechanism through which you provide financial services to poor people. But I'm afraid that in some cases we do charge high interest rates just to cover costs. In Bangladesh, microfinance, because cost is low, we can do microfinance for less than 15%. But in Africa, the same kind of poor people is having to pay 30% interest rate in order to get financial services from us. So it's a problematic thing.
It varies by context.
It varies by context, varies by costs, and so on.
This might be a good, if we have a few minutes, to for you to speak a little bit about the ultra poor.
Yes.
The people who are too poor
Too
to
poor to-
participate in microcredit,
Yeah.
and how has BRAC worked with
Address
the
that.
ultra poor to
I think one of our studies in 1990s came out with the findings that BRAC's microfinance program in Bangladesh is not serving the poorest 10% of the Bangladesh's population. They didn't have access to microfinance. So we went into, we were very surprised. But I thought we are helping the poorest people by providing microfinance as financial services. But then we found that there are very, very poor families who the village people who are receiving microfinance from us, they will keep them out because they're so poor they won't be able to repay their loans, or their community don't trust them. So that was one, the extreme poor. We found that in Bangladesh about 8 to 10% of the families are so poor that they really can't handle financial services, use it effectively, earn an income out of it, and then repay the loan. They can't do that because so we decided to have a special program for the poorest people, and that was not based on loans but grants, asset transfer through grants, then providing a stipend so that they can survive while their asset is becoming income, generating income. Then we also had support service such as healthcare. If they were ill, we would provide basic healthcare. We would send their children to school, because if the children are also remain illiterate, the next generation would be again very poor and won't be able to come out of poverty. So we provided for 2 years, we hold their hands, provided support services of all kinds, as stipend, and asset, and so on, and try to integrate them back to their communities. Because the poorest people are also marginalized out of their, even their kinship relationship is broken, because the poorest people are, even their kins don't want to mix with them too much. So that's what we do over a 2-year period. And at the end of the period, after that, they start on their own. So they can become a microfinance clients afterwards and then come out of poverty. And what we have found over the last 15 years we have been doing this program, that after 2 years after the program ended, all of the people who were in the program were continuing to improve their livelihood.
All of them? 100%?
Almost 95% are continuing to improve. And not only in Bangladesh, but this program has also been going on in 10 other countries. And everywhere, the program shows improvement of people over a time period. After they have left the program, they are still continuing to improve. And this is being done by the Poverty Action Lab at MIT, Abhijit and Esther Duflo, they are studying those. There are three groups. One at Yale University, Dean Carlin's group is looking at this
Innovations for Poverty Action.
Yeah. And then London School of Economics. They are looking at, so these 10 country programs are being looked at by 3 universities, and all of them are finding positive results from this. So hopefully, we are now trying to advocate that countries which are now doing programs such as conditional cash transfers in Brazil and Mexico and even in Tanzania, they adopt our extreme poor, ultra poor program, which seems to have a much better results than conditional cash transfers.
So some of these evaluations are using, getting back to this effectiveness issue, are using randomized controlled trials,
That's right,
very
yeah,
rigorous
absolutely.
academic, and others are being evaluated with more qualitative measures, but together they all seem to be very, very validating the model.
Yeah, that's right. So we are very happy that the results coming out of multiple studies are showing great improvements among these people who are graduating out of poverty.
One interesting aspect of the ultra-poor program is it in all cases that the villagers themselves will come together and identify the poorest, the ultra-poor?
Yes.
So that it's the village has some stake in the success of the program and identifying and the.
Yeah, identifying
could you say
and
about
selecting the ultra poor is we have initially we started with a rapid rural appraisal. In other words, getting the rural people to rank households in the whole entire village, and then come out with the 10% poorest household that they think are the poorest, and then BRAC staff will go into these 10% of the households. If it's a 200 family household or family village, we will go to these 20 households and select maybe 16 or 18, and we think that are the poorest, and we would start the program with them. And then also from the village, we will have a committee to protect these people. We call it Village Poverty Elevation Committee.
protect them from?
Protect them from various kinds. For example, we give a cow to this woman who is very poor, and she can get milk from it. She's one of these disadvantaged, poorest person, and somebody takes her cow away. Her cow is stolen, and she doesn't know what to do. If the poor had, if there is a village committee then she will get protection from them.
Ah.
So she will see her cow is, if it is stolen, they'll go and find out who stole her cow and so on. So we needed some people, committed people to help these poor
Who
people.
are part of the same community.
Part of the same community.
I remember visiting a woman in Bangladesh who was part of the ultra poor program, and she had her cow in the house.
Yeah.
So that nobody would
touch
steal it. It was right in the house.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Right. Okay, we have a question here about that in many poor villages, children work
Yes.
at all the domestic things or the agriculture or the
Right,
farming,
right.
and that how does that fit with the education model for children in
Well, this used to be one of the problems. But now, more and more parents tend to value education for their children. And I think in the 80s, when we started getting children into education more and more, I mean, we wanted 100% all our children to be in school. Then we had problems. But so what we did, we said, all right, what time of the day would you like your children to be working in the field or wherever? And we just want 3.5 hours solid during either the morning or the afternoon. Whenever you feel that you can afford these children to come to school, we will set up the school at that time. So we tried to meet the needs of the family and also provide an education to children. But nowadays, more and more of the children are not working, and the parents would really like their children to be educated, and we don't find that a problem.
This is a question that I'd like to know the answer
Okay.
to. Okay. What new programs would you like to pursue?
What's new program? New program is high school education, quality education, improving quality of education. You know, one of the disappointments of BRAC's education program has been that we have not been able to influence the national system. So if BRAC provided 10% of Bangladesh's children a primary education, 90% of the children went to government schools, but they didn't learn much in these schools. So I'm very disappointed. So it was a great disappointment that the government system, we couldn't transfer anything. Any of the things that we learned, we couldn't transfer it to the government. So when I set up an university, university had the first graduate program was the Institute of Educational Development. It was the first graduate institute, where we then started training government district education officers, as we started giving them an MA degree in educational leadership.
An MA education in BRAC's model
MA
of
in education leadership.
Right.
Leadership. So this was done with the Columbia University's school, Teachers College and BRAC University. We jointly did that program. So now out of 64 districts in Bangladesh, 54 district education officers have got their MA. So at least we know that.
What do you call that strategy?
Huh?
What do you call that strategy?
And then we are also involved in curriculum development for the government. And so hopefully now we will have an impact on the government system. So what BRAC as an NGO couldn't do, BRAC University as an university is trying to do that. You know. So there is multiple institutional mechanism required to change society. I'm coming to the conclusion that,
the toolkit.
that you need
And
university,
yes.
you need a business, and you need a non-profit organization to do things. So you need multiple institutional mechanism to change society.
That's a theme. Well, our time is up, and please join me in thanking Sir Fazle
Thank you.
for his
Thank you so much.
sharing your wisdom and your experience with us.
Thank you so much, Kate.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, all of you.